Welcome to Golden Mastermind Seminars Radio with your host, Jeffrey Combs.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey Combs, president and founder of Golden Mastermind Seminars Incorporated. Welcome to Tuesday Facebook Live. Just reaching over here for the syllabus of today's Facebook Live. Good to be here with you. I will let the Facebook Live populate, and then I'll move into the inspirational portion of today's Facebook Live, releasing fight or flight. It's good to be here with you. History, if you're watching this on replay, or as you come on, the history of this Facebook Live actually originates as a 5 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Pacific afternoon call. And it was originally started for a women's workshop for a Dallas-based wellness company back in the day. And I started it in 1999, in the spring of 1999. So that would be 27 years or 25 years ago. So welcome to Facebook Live here, 25th anniversary of what originally started out as a live conference call on, I don't remember the name of the conference call company, but it was a very, very popular conference call company back in the day. And it was a 5 p.m. Eastern Standard, 2 o'clock in the afternoon Tuesday call. I relatively quickly moved that to a 10:30 Eastern Standard Time as my coaching business began to pick up and thrive. I moved this live conference call to 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, and it was a 1-hour call. And from 1999 up until 2018, it was the more heart than talent mindset call. And I had virtually 500 to sometimes 1,000 listeners on that call consistently. Most of them in that era were network marketers, direct sales professionals, real estate agents, and insurance agents before I really began to cross the bridge into coaching addictions, mind-body connections, and other areas that have expanded my coaching career. So that's how what is now a Facebook Live started off as a live conference call. The more heart than talent mindset call I recently found in the lost archives. The great Jim Rohn call I did in 2006, where I interviewed Jim Rohn on this call in 2006. So if you're watching this Facebook Live this afternoon, welcome. This is part of history. This is a 25-year in the making Facebook Live that started as a live conference call. And I bring to these calls new content and fresh content, and I go over some of the same content. And today I'm going to be covering fight or flight and the skill set of the release of the mechanism of fight or flight. And releasing fight or flight is the let go skill. Now, fight or flight is a autonomic reaction to stimulus. It means you're in this loop without even knowing you're there, because your body is so accustomed to the fight or flight mechanism that you're there before you realize it. And then you're in the refrigerator, you're in the liquor cabinet, you're watching pornography, you're shopping online, you've distracted yourself to fulfill a feeling, to take that edge off, that razor's edge. And if you get a chance, you can go back last week on Instagram or Facebook Reel. I did a Facebook Live or a Reel and an Instagram on the razor's edge, and I'm holding the straight razor, so you can go back and watch that. So letting go of fight or flight. So that will be one of the key accomplishments that you accomplish, because that really is the breakdown to understanding the release of the mechanism of letting go. Letting go is my ability. So you want to personalize letting go. It's my ability to separate my feelings from the events that shape them. If you're an adult child of narcissists, if you're an adult child of alcoholics, if you become a grown-up before your time, if you lose your innocence in the household of alcoholism or chaos, drama, and you have to step up and go from being an 11-year-old young man or a 13-year-old young woman, and you become a therapist, a caretaker, you become a producer of money in your family. You have to take care of the family. You get groomed by someone in the family, by a narcissist, or you're living this object, fight, or flight. The unpredictability of uncertainty and not knowing what's going on and then worrying about the outcome is what begins the process of fight or flight. So if you lose your innocence and have to become a grown-up before your time, if you are beaten with a wooden spoon, a belt, a stick, a hand, a fly swatter, any multitude of situations, if you're slapped at the table, if you are told to clean your plate, any multitude of situations, if you are highly criticized by family members because you are not good enough, or how dare you do something of this magnitude, or whatever the situation is, if you're criticized by the family and you're not good enough, you're going to contain yourself in your body. You're going to shrink your body. You're going to be small, and you're going to hold on to these feelings of unworthiness, not good enough. I want to thank all of you for being here this afternoon. Please, everyone, say hello to my wife and goodbye to my wife. Jonna Ana Combs is actually in the San Francisco airport, and she is about 23 minutes away from catching a flight to Brazil for the next 3 weeks. So she can spend quality time with her family and assist with a construction project that is going on in Brazil. And so say hello to my wife and say goodbye to her because she's on the way out of the country. Thank you very much for showing up here. And I want to thank all of you for showing up here, specifically for those of you who are really seeking this content, understanding the release of the fight or flight mechanism. So once again, if you grow up an adult child of, and then you fill in the blank, adult child of narcissist, adult child of alcoholic addicts, if you grow up in any level of unpredictability, if you have parents that put pressure on you and put you in a position to perform to a standard that is beyond your standard, or it's not realistic, and then you're criticized for not being able to produce to the standard that's not realistic, you're going to be living in unpredictability. And you hear that door shut in the car, and you know your father's going to walk up the sidewalk, the door's going to open, and then there's going to be the unpredictability that comes in, that walks in the door. And so that's what fight or flight is. These are some of the origins of fight or flight. Or if you lived in domestic violence, either your parents or you yourself have attracted domestic violence, you are going to be in this acute fight or flight, attracting to reality the like-minded situations over and over to fulfill those feelings, which become the payoff. Now, right here, this is my handwritten syllabus, Events Create Your Emotions. Then on the email that we sent out, it's right here. If you receive this email, which if you're not on my email list, you can go to my website and put yourself on that list. Right here, here's the syllabus that events create. See, this is what it is. Releasing fight or flight. Events create your emotions. No longer the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings. It's breathe, release, and let go. And you want to be able to release your fight or flight. And if you're not releasing that fight or flight, then you're holding on to it. And this is what leads to the stuffed feelings. Good afternoon to all of you here. So I want to thank you for being here this afternoon. The topic is dedicated to releasing fight or flight. So release is the let go. Letting go is a mechanism. And as you learn to master that mechanism, the skill of letting go and of releasing the fight or flight is to be able to recognize it. So when you start to feel your body condense, that's the fight or flight. When you start to cower down, when you start to, even the thought of worrying about the future that has not happened creates fight or flight, because the neurochemicals that you're emotionally addicted to are being released, which typically is a cortisol adrenaline concoction. It's a cardio cocktail of worry. And then if you edify that you are a chronic worrier, I worry all the time, I'm always worried. If you edify that, then you're actually magnetizing to reality people and situations to fulfill this. The key to the let go cycle is being able to breathe. One of my clients, Josh Morin, teaches a a Wim Hof breath cycle, a Wim Hof breath technique. You can Google that and look it up. Blake Redmond, good to see you this afternoon. Bob Campbell, Danielle, Jessica, good to see all of you here this afternoon that I do recognize. I saw Aaron, I saw Valerie. Thank you all for being here. We're covering fight or flight, the mechanism of fight or flight, and then the release of it. A very key component is the awareness that I'm worried, the awareness that I'm in the future that hasn't happened. And this is what leads to prospecting avoidance, lead generation avoidance, anxiety about making a phone call, anxiety about putting myself out there, anxiety about calling on a business, anxiety about presenting a product, service, benefit, and feature, anxiety about the future that hasn't happened. That's the fight or flight mechanism that will keep you in an overwhelmed state. So the key feeling that most people feel of fight or flight is overwhelm. And so the overwhelm is wanting to control the outcome. Letting go is the ability to separate your feelings from the events that shape them. So salespeople frequently get overwhelmed, go into fight or flight, and then avoid the phone calls. And then their communication is, I'm not ready to get on the phone. Well, you're not actually setting the phone down with a rotary dialer like the Clampetts had in the Beverly Hillbillies. You're not spinning that rotary dial telephone. You're dialing a series of numbers to see if you can connect with anyone. And what you do is most people hold on to these feelings and then they turn it into avoidance, procrastination. And then the next emotion that comes after that is, many people use the word guilt, but it's really shame, because you're personalizing. So when you feel guilty about not making the phone calls, it's not actually that's not the correct emotion. The emotion that you're experiencing is shame, because you have put off again what you should have done. It's personal, and it's about you. You have done that because you have anxiety about being rejected and or abandoned. Now, to change the perspective means change the view. As you change the view of the reality of the situation, you may have been rejected as a child, traumatized as a child. That would be the fact. So those are the facts of the matter that hold you hostage in your own emotional state, that keeps you in anxiety, fear, and doubt. So once you begin to understand how calibrated energy operates, so calibrated energy is measured in hertz and or cycles per second. Lowest level of energy that we as human beings, souls having human experience, operate in is grief and apathy. Apathy is despondent energy. The medical community likes to call it depression and then medicate for it. And the reality of it is, apathy is a low level of feeling of self. It's the lowest level of the lower self. And that lowest level of lower self is grief and apathy. So grief is loss, and that's the end of the era. And then the apathy is low self-worth about self. And the emotions are shame and overwhelm that are most connected emotions. So to really free yourself from the ties that bind is to have an understanding of why you do what you do. That is called cause and effect. I began understanding this content in the late 1980s as I started to read the great Louise Hay, who wrote the book You Can Heal Your Life. That was my first introduction. That was the original Rainbow copy back in the 80s. Then I bought the companion book, You Can Heal Your Body, which breaks down all of the vertebrae in the neck, the back, and the lumbar. So the upper cervical, that's C1 through 7. Then your back is your thoracic, that is 1 through 12. And then from your waist to your tailbone is the lumbar, that is 1 through 7. And all of these vertebrae are affected by our emotions. And any one of these vertebrae can subluxate, meaning go out of place, because of our emotional state. And so this is why you'll have a neck ache. Well, it's like the pain in the neck is the pain you experience of the fight or flight that you are holding on to. So just keep in context that fight or flight is the automatic reaction. So in the let go process, the skill of letting go is being able to respond to stimulus versus react to it. Fight or flight is the reaction. As an athlete, and I see Heather has joined us, Heather understands this deeply, athletes go into fight or flight due to they have performance anxiety. And salespeople have performance anxiety. And if you own your own business, you may experience performance anxiety, or the boss puts pressure on you. It can be performance anxiety. And then in sports, it's called choking, gagging, throwing up. I mean, any of these situations, these sports terms, the analogies are, this is what many people do, is they choke. It's called performance anxiety, but it's a mechanism of fight or flight due to repressed feelings. Repressed feelings are the feelings we hold on to. And there's Josh Moran. Josh, I was just edifying you. Josh, feel free to put your information there, your website, or where people can reach you. Josh is an expert in cold plunging and also is an expert in Wim Hof breathing technique. He also specializes in the vagus nerve and the polyvagal theory. He's one of my keynote speakers. He will speak for me for the rest of my life if he wants to continue, because his content is top tier and he deeply understands the connection between the brain, the gut, the vagus nerve, and how we cut ourselves off in fight or flight. So fight or flight is that automatic reaction to stimulus. So the let go process, instead of holding on to fight or flight, you learn to let go. And in letting go of fight or flight, you're responding to stimulus. It becomes stimulus response, stimulus react. I mean, it's the equivalent of being in the batter's box in softball or baseball, and you're able to hit a ball that you can't see because of the trajectory and the speed from the release point. Jenny Finch from the University of Arizona was considered the greatest softball player of all time. And then Nolan Ryan, his curveball at times was just completely unhittable. And for people to be skilled at it, you're virtually able to, now you're moving into hand-eye coordination. Now you're talking about as you let go of fight or flight, you're in a different level of hand-eye coordination. You're able to hit what you can't see, and it's not from guessing, it's from repetition experience, and then the inner knowing, and then having the affinity for the skill set of it. And so I am very skilled with tomahawks, weapons, knives, bows and arrows. I'm very ambidextrous with both hands. I was a skilled baseball player, basketball player, football player, track star, and I was very skilled at being able to adapt and adjust to my opponent without being in fight or flight. What hindered my career is that I had leftover residual feelings consistently of not being good enough, performance anxiety, pressure that was put on me that I couldn't perform to a set of standards, to the moving target of standards that were never really set. And then I would be worried. I remember in high school, track practice was an art track and field. I was a very skilled track and field athlete, and I used to dread the workouts. I would actually, this is what in the mind, body, and in fight or flight, I would actually make myself sick and have dry heaves before track practice because I would dread the workout. And then because I was in so much fight or flight, I could never run quarter miles and half miles to my potential. I would consistently run 54 and 53-minute quarter miles when I was capable of 48, 49, 50, and 51. I could never really break the 2-minute half mile barrier on an 880 when I was capable of 150, 151, 152. Now, these are yards, not meters. It was a different standard in my era. I grew up in top-tier track country. Jerome Howe, if you ever want to look him up, he's from Trainer, Treynor. He won the NCAA mile at Kansas State. He ran in the 350s, low 350s, and I ran on his track multiple times as a high school junior and senior. And I never could really reach my potential because of how much fight or flight I was in. And I also never was able to focus on one sport, so I never could really reach that potential, once again, because of how much fight or flight I lived in. And this affected me in multiple ways. And until I really understood that fight or flight mechanism, once I became clean and sober, then the fight or flight that I held on to created headaches in cervical 1 and cervical 2 in the upper neck. I'm right-handed, left side overcompensate, fight or flight. So the left side would subluxate on my neck. Then I would grind, clench. The medical community calls it TMJ. Reality was it was acute fight or flight. based on performance anxiety, about not being good enough, not being able to perform to a set of standards. There were consistent moving targets that I could never hit. So if I can't hit the target, then I'm never good enough. And so this is the chronic fight or flight. How many of you identified with what I just covered? If you identified with what I just covered, please give me a fist five here. Because if you've lived in fight or flight, it hinders you. Now, a major breakthrough for you is letting go of fight or flight. Because what it does, the body relaxes. The body begins to relax. You're in a much more relaxed energy. So Jessica, you understand this. Thank you, Heather. Love all of you. So this also creates massive gut issues, irritable bowel syndrome. So if you grow up in a family where there is an inflamed family environment, you're going to be in inflammation, which then can create prostate issues, irritable bowel syndrome, bladder issues, and other situations, yeast infections, H. pylori, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial organisms. And then there's also the parasites that show up. And then we eat bad food, stuff our feelings, drink alcohol, vape, smoke marijuana, watch pornography, procrastinate, avoid, do all these situations to continue to perpetuate the same set of situations, to fill the same set of feelings, to validate and justify that we are not good enough. It becomes an arduous, overwhelming, exhausting life that we live in. Yes, Jessica, I'm very, very proud of you. You are breaking through. Danielle, you are breaking through. I've said, Kevin, thank you. Many of you are experiencing different levels of sobriety. Now you're the one's accomplishment. I facilitated the breakthrough factor for you, and many of you are beginning to really take that quantum leap in your life, where now you're starting to understand what I've been telling you for years. They show up. The people show up because you're emotionally available. You're living in the allow space where you're allowing yourself to be your best self, and you're not avoiding being your best self because you have crossed the bridge of good enough. And once you live in the good enough, then you will seldom relapse because the pleasure isn't worth the pain. People have asked me, don't you ever miss a drink? Never. Pleasure isn't worth the pain. I have told people I haven't had a dessert since I was a teenager, and people go, are you kidding me? Are you crazy? No, I'm not crazy. I don't have that craving. The pleasure isn't worth the pain. And so as you learn to address fight or flight, right, Kevin? Kevin says learning to trust God and self. That's the surrender. As you learn the surrender, you're moving into the providence. That's God. God will provide. The providing is the providence. And so that is, as you begin to let go of the trying to control an outcome that hasn't happened, then you are no longer the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings. So that you're not the pain body. You're not the body that's in pain. You're not in chronic pain because you're releasing the pain. You're releasing. You're surrendering. You're surrendering to God. You're surrendering to your higher power. You're surrendering your will to be stuck and be right. You're surrendering the payoff because the pleasure is no longer worth the pain. Scott Fellini, good to see you. I see you here, my brother. Thank all of you for being here this afternoon. If any of you are on today's call and you'd like to speak to me about one-on-one coaching, if you're not presently coaching with me, feel free to reach out to me. If you'd like to add on to your existing coaching, you're presently coaching with me, I do have a unique marketing proposition. Feel free to reach out to me. Or if you're brand new watching my content, feel free to request a free 20-minute coaching session. Some of the content I covered is right here in this book, The Breakthrough Factor. I want to thank Henry Nova. Henry bought 2 books from me today. Henry is a client of mine. Leslie, good to see you this afternoon. Good to see all of you. Aaron, thank you for all of your outstanding comments and your support. And once again, everyone, say goodbye to my wife. She's going to get on a plane. She's on her way to Brazil today, where she will be flying, I believe, to Houston, and then another 14 hours or so to Brazil. Scott Lucas, good to see you this afternoon. Good to see all of you. Breathe, release, and let go.